So, Jason, we have spoken in the past about passkeys.
Yeah.
And passkeys as a substitute for, traditional username, password logins, and why this is a net positive. Recently, though, interesting announcement from the NCSC in the UK, which is essentially that they cannot fully recommend passkeys as a solution.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. So tell us about this.
So we are talking about FIDO WebAuthn. Passkeys was a name that was come up with because of the fact that it was adopted by Google, Apple, all the major places where you might be doing authentication.
Right.
And that was great. I'm a big fan of WebAuthn. I think that for business to consumer authentication, we've talked about that before where, I don't think I would recommend it or use it in the enterprise because it's too hard to manage. But I definitely think that it has a place in business to consumer. In other words, if you don't already know who the person who's authenticating to you is, WebAuthn is a great way for them to be able to self-administrate and to get the passkey onto their laptop, mobile device, etc.
Sure.
Perfect for business to consumer scenarios.
Yeah.
Okay, so UK NCSC, hallelujah. They're really thinking hard about getting rid of passwords wherever they can. We should always celebrate that.
Yeah.
And I think that anytime those kinds of events happen in a major way, we should bring it up on this podcast. But something interesting came up, and it's exactly what you just said, which is they couldn't fully recommend passkeys just as a blanket solution.
Did they say why?
Yeah, they did. They did. And we had an episode not that long ago about, hey, where did passkeys go? And it's kind of funny because it's kind of gone through fits and starts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm seeing a little more since that episode.
I'm seeing more since then, which is good.
Yeah.
My own personal usage of it has, every time I get to click on it, I'm happy. But I have a story on that later. So let's answer your question.
Yeah.
What did the NCSC say? Inconsistent support and experiences.
Yes, I agree with that.
So give me your take on that, Tim.
Well, so I think, first of all, the availability of itself is incredibly spotty, which is hard for the consumer, right?
It's not everywhere.
You can't count on it. There's no real external indicators about where it is and where it isn't. I, for one, can't really remember what services I've implemented for passkey and what I have not.
Right.
I don't really know what to do in the event that I want to log in from, if I have passkey enabled on my consumer site and I get a new computer, my old computer falls in the lake. I don't know how to make that work, right? That certainly is a source of anxiety, right? So if you have something that's mission critical and you're like, if I can't access this service, like I am sunk. And I turn around and say, what if my laptop gets stolen? What if I lose my phone? Will I be able to get in? And I'm sure these answers are available, like somewhere in the world, but they're not obvious.
Right.
And so all of that, it just feels like a very high stakes decision to go all in on the passkeys this way, especially in a scenario where if something happens, like I lose my phone, if I am just dead in the water, truly out of luck. And so, you start to say, well, okay, or I start to say, well, okay, is this a service that I could live without? If the answer is yes, right? If I couldn't access a couple of my favorite online retailers on my phone, fine. I don't need to access them on my phone. So I can do passkeys there. And if it doesn't work, all right, I can get the thing somewhere else. But if there's something that I'm going to critically need or I am in trouble, I got to think carefully before I enable a passkey.
It's true. It's true. Multiply that by the entirety of the UK government.
Right.
And, that's why they're kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
So Tim, they also called out specifically
Okay.
the long-lived nature of raw key pairs.
Well, sure. Absolutely. You bet. We've talked about this a lot, right?
Absolutely. So for those of you who haven't paid attention to 500 plus episodes of the Root Causes podcast, the reason why we have certificates is to be able to wrap that key pair with a policy, and that policy is an expiry date. You want your credential form factors to expire.
Yes, for sure.
You gain so much by that. Yeah. Now you have to manage those things, but having an unmanaged raw key pair, God, that's so. If we had a FIDO representative here, and my goodness, come on the podcast and talk, about how you're handling this, because I think FIDO has said that something's coming to be able to make that easier, and I'll take them at the word, no problem. But come on and tell us about it, okay? Because as of right now, even the UK government called it out as being an issue.
So in addition to expiration, we would also want to see a FIDO equivalent of revocation.
Right.
Because that's very valuable in the system. Get rid of that thing. I know there's a problem. I'm going to revoke this and do something clean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tim, the list is actually fairly long, so I'll rhyme off a few of them. Account recovery processes.
Sure. Yeah, that's just what I'm talking about. Absolutely.
Platform differences.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you're living completely in the Apple world and you have your key ring with FIDO, you really won't notice too much. But you start flipping like I do to Windows, to Android.
Yep.
And here's where my personal story comes in. There were a few sites that I was like, hey, passkey, fantastic, I'm going to use it. And all of a sudden, I've started to do a lot more development, and I'm using a dedicated Linux box for that. Guess what? It doesn't work. And here's where the inconsistency lies. Some sites where I use passkeys will say, oh, do you have an iOS or an Android? Great. Here's a QR code that you can scan, and it'll authenticate on your phone and pass through the token to say you've logged in.
Okay.
Great. But not every site does it. And so therefore, I have literally sat in my chair, dead in the water, could not log into an online site because I had used passkeys.
And that's the real thing that makes me fearful. And I think a lot of people, is you get yourself into that situation where they're here to make life better. And instead they make life a whole lot worse.
Yes. The inconsistency of the implementation, the going between systems, and if you go into Linux, it's kind of non-existent. Actually having to set this thing up is fairly complex. Is therefore, that's why there's such an inconsistency in implementation, because getting it working is probably an achievement. Getting it working incredibly well is almost like you've got to be a real expert.
Wouldn't you think that that's solvable? Wouldn't you think that you could just get a library that could be developed that would take most of the pain and the custom configuration and the work out of this?
I think that FIDO, as a group that created a standard, they're not the ones responsible, right? And I don't think they see themselves as being responsible. I don't see them as being responsible for coming up with all the implementation stuff. The ecosystem needs to come up with it. The problem is it's a fractured ecosystem. And even though the big OSs all bought in, it's not like they bought in with 2 feet in the water. They didn't completely solve everything yet. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think you're right. And even if it's just intuitive, you're intuitively right in saying, of course it could be solved. I think, and this is why I believe in WebAuthn. That's why I believe in passkeys as a concept, because it could all be solved. It's just, will it be? Mm-hmm. And I think that it remains to be seen. Where do we go from here? I think this was it was just an article that came out end of May, early June 2025, where NCSC was like, hey, we're trying to get rid of passwords. And it turns out that passkeys is not the real answer. I'm going to leave you with a thought here, Tim, which is, when I say and you say WebAuthn passkeys are really great if you only think about B2C use cases for authentication. You and I say that because we've been in this business forever, and so we can see the truth. The problem is, I don't think everybody else sees it that way. They see it as an authenticator.
Okay.
And I think that you have directors of IT in corporations looking at WebAuthn going, hey, I want to get rid of passwords too. I'm no different than the UK government. I want to use an authenticator. WebAuthn passkeys is out there for me. And they may not realize, no, it's not for you.
Yeah. In that B2B scenario, you have other choices.
Yes, you do.
In the B2C passkey scenario, you don't.
And this is the thing. I love what you said about, and this is what was going through my head when you said it. You said, this seems solvable. And that's because it has been solved, Tim.
Okay.
B to E, business to employee, business to business, strong authenticators that use digital certificates.
Yeah.
They've solved most of this.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate that the big missing link for the universe was B2C, because those systems were not meant for B2C. Those are highly centralized.
Yeah, you can't. Right.
And nobody's ever pretending that, a Sectigo private CA, is going to be a great idea for a great big B2C implementation. It probably is not, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah.
But therefore, I don't see WebAuthn being a competitor product in that sense. That's why I cheer it on. And I cheer it on, except, who is responsible for fully baking out how to implement it? And I'll go one step further. You and I did do a podcast on a fundamental flaw that was discovered by white hat researchers, which is, yes, there is a key pair. It's great. You and I both are gigantic believers in, as soon as you have an asymmetric secret, it's a much stronger secret than, other garbage that's out there, username, passwords.
Right.
However, shared secrets as a problem also is a problem in WebAuthn passkeys, because underlying all of this is a shared secret token. And who is responsible for protecting it? Well, ideally the browsers.
Yeah.
But I believe Chrome was the only one that did an extra check on the validity, and it basically was doing protection of that token, the underlying token of WebAuthn. The problem is that I think they took it out and none of the other browsers have it. And so, yes, it is a stronger, I'm not going to say passkeys are not a strong thing, and certainly the PKI part of it, right? The asymmetric secret part of it is as strong as anything. However, is it sitting on top of something that's less secure than you think? I'm not saying that's an easy attack. I'm not saying you're going to have a plague of attackers, exploiting that lack of protection on that symmetric token. However, it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? And it's the same problem though, Tim. It's the fact that the ecosystem around passkeys hasn't gelled. So it's that is its common problem. Mm-hmm. So all these things listed by NCSC, all these problems that you and I are talking about, it all comes down to one thing. It all comes down to the fact that the ecosystem hasn't gelled in the same way that other ecosystems have.
Yeah. Okay. So why is that?
Everybody has their own take on how to do things. And, you know, Google doesn't want to make it easier for you to use Apple stuff and vice versa, you know, and that's vested interest kind of things. And I think both sides, I mean, there's more sides than just them, but I think no matter who you are, everybody's taking a wait and see approach to, is anybody going to take the bull by the horns, because I'm just not gonna.
Yeah.
Now, if there's people from Google or Apple or FIDO themselves who want to come forward and say, Jay, you're totally wrong. Tim, you need to know this. Please come on.
Okay.
Full invitation to correct us. I'm just stating it the way that I see it and reporting it back to you guys.
All right. And in the meantime, if nothing else, we know that we have this external recommendation or lack of recommendation from the NCSC that
It's not for everything.
yeah, it's not for everything.
Thanks, Tim.
All right. Thanks, Jason.